fever.
Hi everyone, welcome to our coffee talk. It's been a while since we've had one, so we're pretty excited about our topic today and pretty excited to be sharing some information about brand voice and teaching everyone that's joining us today. So thank you everyone for joining us. I guess the first thing is, I'd actually like to introduce Curniss before I get into what a brand voice is. Curniss is our client success manager, one of our client success managers at Shout, but she also carries or wears a lot of other hats. And one of the things that Curniss and I love to do and collaborate on is Shout's marketing. So she's always the behind the scenes person when it comes to the coffee talks, but today, because she's very knowledgeable about brand voice, we brought her into the front. So
Yay,
welcome Curniss.
Thanks, Sue.
You're welcome. And I will be honest, the reason that we're having this session today is Curniss taught me about brand voice. When she created a brand voice for one of our clients, I really didn't have a great understanding of what a brand voice was, and she taught me that. So I'm hoping today we can teach everyone out there what a brand voice is and why you need one. So let's start and let's talk about first, what is a brand voice? Well, a brand voice is different than your branding. You might think about your branding, which is your logo and your visual identity and your Pantone colors and things like that. And we've been talking about consistent branding for a long time, but brand voice is something different. Brand voice is your unique characteristics that represent your brand. So think about if your brand was a person, what would that person be saying? What would that person be talking about? What kind of tone would that person have if they were, your brand and representing your brand? And that's sort of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what makes your brand voice unique and why you need to have one. So I'm going to turn it over to Curniss to sort of start and chime in a bit, and then we'll be sharing some examples of great brand voices and maybe some not so great brand voices and some inspiration on how you can develop your own brand voice.
Yeah, and then we've also prepared a brand voice guide, a worksheet that we'll be sending to everyone on our Coffee Talk email list. So if you're not on there, be sure to subscribe. We're going to put a link for you guys to be able to do that so that you can go through the exercises and start defining your own brand voice, which should be really fun. But brand voice, like Sue said, is really the same thing as your visual identity, but you have to think about it for your words. So what we love to think about is every single time you interact with a client, every time you have one of your potential customers' attention, it's a moment to make a connection. It's a moment to share a message, make a good impression, and then really going back to that connection, create a connection. And more, because we're not interacting in person anymore, you need to have that personal connection online. So obviously the images you use, your logo, your colors, you want that to make an impression and convey something, but also your words. So often when we think of words, we think of, the name of a brand, your taglines, your calls to action, but it goes so much beyond that. You have to think, what is your social copy saying? What is your website copy saying? When you're sending, and it's not just posting stuff on social media. Obviously, we're always focusing on the ads, emails, social posts, but it's also, how do you send your invoices? How do you pick up the phone? How do you have your chatbot set up for your automatic replies? Or when someone submits a contact form on your website, what is the copy there? Those are all moments where you have your customer or your potential customer's attention. You want to make a good impression. You want to convey what you're really about. You want to make that personal connection. You want to start developing a relationship. And those are really, really precious moments. And that's where brand voice is so, so important. So you need one to create those moments of connection and then to really convey what your brand is about, what you stand for, your values, and why people should do business with you. Because at the end of the day, there's so many different people offering, university courses or banks or marketing even, but what makes you distinctive is your personality, your values, and so how can you communicate that in your brand voice?
For sure. And so when you think about brand voice, one of the things that I learned about brand voice was if you're a company, and we're really working on our brand voice right now, And let's just say that all of a sudden on your social media, you have a certain language that you're speaking to your clients and your customers. And maybe the reason that there is a certain type of tone or language or certain adjectives that you're using is because the individual doing your social media could be somebody who's new to the company or doesn't quite understand how the company speaks or what the voice of the company is. So they're using certain emojis and they're using certain hashtags and they're using very lightweight terms. But yet when you pull back and look at your organization as a whole, your organization is actually quite professional and quite noble and maybe has historical value and is very sincere. But yet your social media intern is putting out copy that is very sort of relaxed and very free-flowing. And all of a sudden, the consumer or the client looks at those two voices and says, what is this company? There's one voice here on social media that's very spirited and very loud and very rambunctious, but yet when I'm on the website and I'm actually dealing with emails and individuals in the company, it's a very serious and very structured company. So you can see why it's important now to have that brand voice, because you don't want your clients to have that inconsistency. You want them to read your website copy and your social media posts and interact with email with your salespeople and the person answering the phone, like Curniss said, all to have the same voice. And that's what brand voice is. We used to be able to show who we were at a trade show or face-to-face sales meetings where we would meet the individuals. It's a lot harder to do that now virtually. So you want to make sure that what you're conveying, whether it's on like your email or your invoices or your social media, is exactly the same as the way the salesperson is making a pitch or your slide decks or your brochures. So creating brand voice, and I think we'll get into a little bit more of the specifics, the number one thing I can say about it is making sure that everyone is speaking the same language, whether it's your new intern, Marvin in accounting that's been there for 30 years, or the salesperson that's out there to ABC, always be close that deal. So always having a consistent voice.
Yeah, consistency is so important when it comes to brand voice. And then to make sure that everyone can be consistent, it's actually putting that in a guide and having something that you can send to your new hire or you can send to your intern, and then you have something to refer to. So it's very, very clear, and it's easy to be consistent across the board.
So I think the best way for us to show you an example of a brand voice is to use ours. And Curniss has done an amazing job of creating a brand voice for Shout Media. So Curniss, let's walk everyone through our brand voice, and I think that's going to give everyone a better idea of how it flows and how it works and how to set theirs up.
Yeah, sounds
so
good.
Let's bring it up.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, so the first thing that we do in our brand voice is really defining the brand messaging. The first thing that you want to do is make sure that you know what you stand for. So you need to identify things like your vision, your mission, your goals, company values, taglines, and anything else that you want to consistently communicate, and make sure that is always coming through your copy and your content, no matter what you do.
And then I think that this is my favorite part of any of the brand voices that we've developed is your brand personality. So what words are you using to describe your company, and what are the words that you're using, the terms, to reflect what your company represents? Or again, we'll go back to like that personality of your company. So if you look at, and if you follow Shout Media, you know this is accurate, these are some of the terms that we have created to represent our company. And we start off with hardworking. And we believe that that was one of the top key words that came up when we thought about our company, because we are hard workers. And then underneath that, we have some other very, very specific terms. So we're experts, and I won't read them all obviously, but we're professional, we're passionate, we're obsessed, we're driven. We also believe in goals and strategy and success, results, insight, analyze. So those are all words that represent our company and also represent the personality or the person that we are.
And then one thing I'll say to that is when you have that list of personality traits, so again, you're building your brand. Your brand is like its own person, it's its own entity of sorts. And you need to have those personality traits that define the brand. So when someone thinks of Shout Media, we want people to think hardworking, creative, fun. So you can define those personality traits, and then all those words is a branded thesaurus, so that when you're looking for adjectives to use in your copy and your content, it's really easy to know that, okay, these are the kinds of words that we want to use because we want to reinforce reinforce the brand personality traits that we have, and you're not using things that are off-brand, because there's a lot of ways to define an expert, but different words will evoke different emotions, and that really matters when you're trying to convey your brand personality.
And if you scroll through, you can also see that we also have a section that we have the header as fun-loving. So we're not all fun and games, because I think that would be the wrong connotation to have for a company, right? We don't want our clients thinking that we're just always fun-loving and always joking around. So we've built in a strong personality that combines that hard-working aspect with, very, very sincere adjectives about that, but then also brings in that fun-loving component, so that when we do create our policies aren't written with very, very, stringent structure. So we even bring in a little bit of that fun-loving into our policies or into our emails or into our documentation. And we'll provide some examples soon of other organizations that, even though you have a serious document and some of your procedures are serious, you want to still convey that same message right through internally to your employees. So you don't want to have a brand voice that just goes out to your clients, but that same brand voice, and this is kind of key, make sure that you're also conveying that to your employees as well, because you shouldn't have a brand voice that's all strict and structured for your employees and then a different brand voice that goes out to your clients, because that's very misleading.
So that reminds me, so for brand voice, you need to be consistent but authentic. Genuine is the other really important thing. So you need to define your brand voice, you need to use it consistently, you use a guide to help everyone on your team do that, but then it needs to be genuine. If your brand voice is fun-loving, but your office environment is not fun-loving, that's gonna come through, and then people are gonna start to question, are they telling the truth? Are they really being transparent? And all of those things can affect your relationship, can affect whether you close a certain deal, you get a certain client, you get a repeat client or not. So you need to be authentic, and that really matters internally, like Sue was saying, the internal communication, because if you want to make sure that you convey fun-loving, it's one thing to have fun-loving adjectives and really fun copy and fun creatives, but your whole staff is really stressed out and always really sad. When they pick up the phone or when they send an email, that's going to come through. So it's important to do things like we do. Pizza Fridays, Food Fridays, games, and we do bring in fun-loving activities into our team culture so that those adjectives, that personality trait is genuine. It's really coming from the culture that we build here.
And I think the other nice thing about a voice brand is it's also something that you can continue to evolve and aspire to. So maybe an organization starts off with a voice brand, but you're just not quite there yet, but you want to get there. So if your reviews are always showing that you're never on time, or your products don't make, they don't get there on time, or your reviews are negative, and yet your voice brand is very like, we're always on time, we're always delivering. It's one thing to have, again, that authenticity, but you can aspire to get there. So if you're reading your reviews and it says a certain, negative thing, then work through your brand voice to, make those changes among the organization until your brand voice matches what the clients are saying about you. And then I think that's when when your clients start saying fun-loving, if that's your goal, and easy to work with and friendly, and now your reviews are saying that, and your brand voice says that, that's when you know that you've kind of got that success, right? So you want to make sure your clients are saying what you're saying.
Okay, so next part of our brand voice is we go from personality to brand tone. So what is the tone you're conveying in the sentences that you're saying, the tempo? Are you using really long words, adjectives? Are you really short, to the point? That really does make a difference in terms of how people interpret the content that they're reading. And then we also have some fun things that are really important these days, especially on social media. So we've got emojis and hashtags. You can also have expressions that you like using a lot. But having emojis is something it's really great to have, because it really helps people stop and read your copy, but you don't want to use emojis that aren't in alignment with your brand voice. Even professional companies can use emojis, but maybe don't use the smiling heart emojis. You might want to use, a thumbs up emoji
Yeah.
once in a while.
Yeah, or a check mark, or
yeah.
something that represents. So we actually have built out, and we do this for our clients in the voice brand, an actual catalog of emojis. And this way you can send this to the intern or the individual doing your social media and say, this is all documentation that you are allowed to use, and that makes their job so much easier. So if they're second guessing, like, ooh, should I put the blush emoji? You know, is that proper for our brand voice? You look at the emojis and go, oh, it's right here in our brand voice. Let's use it. Or if you're a more structured, serious company, maybe you look and you say, ooh, you know what? That doesn't seem to be the flow of our emoji catalog. Let's stick with what we have, which is like the thumbs up, the check marks, and a little bit more of that professional. But nowadays, again, you want to put that personality out there. Don't be afraid to use emojis. And we'll show examples of where it gets pretty dry in social media when there's no hashtags, no emojis, no, creative content. So this kind of builds out a bit of that library so that everyone's speaking the same language, especially on social media when they're updating that.
Yeah, and hashtags is another important one. If you're posting on social media, you should have hashtags for your brand so that you're always, when someone clicks on the hashtag, all of your posts are coming up. So we have branded hashtags. It could be hashtag shout media. That's your branded hashtag. But make sure that you are using hashtags consistently, and then you can bring up other hashtags to go with your campaign or the subject that you're talking about. It's important to use hashtags. It's a great way to filter out and get your content seen by more people on social media.
And that library, again, sets that tone so that the people that are posting aren't putting, inappropriate hashtags out there. And we see that happen all the time. And I mean, you can just Google a lot of cases where someone put a hashtag out with your organization's post that was definitely something inappropriate, and now there's all this backlash. So it kind of gives, it goes almost hand in hand with the social media policy of your voice, so that you're not using inappropriate hashtags, but you're using research ones that are actually going to drive traffic.
Yeah, do's and don'ts is really helpful in your brand voice. You can
Yes.
say, do use this, don't.
That's right.
Use this to make it really clear.
Yeah, and that's another component of the brand voice, the do's and don'ts section,
Yeah.
which helps everyone that is working together to create that voice. Because even as an owner, you might have a certain voice that you want to convey, and you do convey that, but now you're passing that on to every single employee or team member that's working with you, so that you are sharing that common voice.
So should we look at our Instagram?
Yeah, let's take a look at our Instagram, because I think we have really developed our brand voice, and now our Instagram and our other social media we think is really representative of the brand voice. So let's take a quick look.
So when you look at our social media, one of the things to keep in mind is that different people are making designs, are writing copy, and are updating our social media, but it looks consistent because we have not only a visual guide for all the visuals, but we also have a brand voice guide. So if you look at one of our posts, for example, you'll see that we're using certain emojis quite often. We use a lot of lists. And then if you scroll down, you'll see our hashtags. So we have a bank of hashtags that we're consistently using. And we have a certain personality, so we try to make it really personal. We like to make sure that we're talking as if we're talking to a friend. I mean, most of our clients are friends, so we talk to people as if they were some of our good friends, clients, and we keep it really lighthearted, fun, but also we share examples of our projects and showcase where our expertise really does shine through, give really good examples of our work, because we're not just fun-loving, but like we said, we're hardworking and we're really good at what we do.
And I love the fact that our Instagram and our other social media really reflects that. And again, whether we have 6 people, because it usually is about 6 different people that are updating our social media at any given time, it seems like one person is updating, and that's what you want. And that one person is Shout Media. So, you don't have a lot of different copy going out and one person that has their own serious personality writing. You have one voice, the copy's already sort of been written in different parts of the brand voice, the tone is set, the adjectives are set, and now you can tell from our posting that there's a voice, and you can kind of tell what that voice is.
Okay, so how about some examples where there is no voice?
So we started to look at some different websites that were more educational institutions or government organizations. And some of them we found did an amazing job with sort of the voice brand when it came to their website development. So this Royal Roads University, when I went through their website, I loved the way they wrote some of their copy. So instead of just saying things like admissions, it was flexible admissions. So their admissions policy was very flexible, and their copy was really well written. And instead of just like get a degree, it was build towards your degree. And there were things like learning that fits for all instead of just learning. So they really, really did a great job of sort of, going above and beyond with their brand voice. When I was going through their website, I kind of got a really good feeling of what this educational institution could provide to me if I were a student or a stakeholder or whatever it was if I attended. But now, as a potential student, I would go to their social media and I would start to go through there. And I'm going to be honest, I was lost. All of a sudden, the brand voice that I saw that was in their website, it was gone. And we can scroll and sort of take a look on their Instagram. It was very short sentences, not written with that sort of flourish that the website had. It was a lack of any emojis whatsoever. There was no hashtags. There was no place for me to go. There was no comments. It just seemed like they really needed a voice brand, because when I looked at the website versus their social media, I lost who they were. I couldn't tell what their brand voice was. I didn't know what that organization was as a person.
Yeah.
And we found a lot of those.
Yeah, and then what that does, as a potential student, you would go and say, oh, are they actually a university that I want to go to? Are they actually fun? Will they really be flexible? Is it legitimate? Is their website just a really good website, but it's actually not a good university? It starts to bring up questions that you'd rather avoid. You want to be consistent. You want to reinforce your message. You want to build trust as people keep going with their customer journey instead of starting to bring doubt. And that's what inconsistency does. So consistency is key.
Yeah, so once you develop that brand voice, again, it has to be on everything. It can't just be on your website.
Yeah.
And it has to be on everything. And I lost it at that point. I couldn't determine who they were any longer, and I just fell off I didn't want to go any deeper. Like, I didn't want to go to different checkpoints. I didn't want to keep going. I kind of wanted to move on.
And then, so another really good example of a great website with the social media that falls off a little bit is Great Golf Development. So this website has really great copy. You'll see that they have a lot of fun taglines. It's great to be home. They really try to build a sense of you're not just going to build a building, but you're building home. You're building home life. Giving people their space. The call to actions are great. I like to be prepared. We love their awards and recognition area. We don't mean to brag, but it brings a lot of personality throughout their website. You can tell that they're really personable, they're fun, they're family-oriented, they're home-oriented. And then you click onto their social media, and you start to wonder, are they?
Yeah, like they lose that whole, again, brand voice when you start to look at their social media. And maybe it's just the social media person is disconnected from whoever designed the website or helped work on the website. Again, because we don't think they have a structured brand voice. And again, there's very little content, there's very little engagement, there's no emojis, it's just very different from the voice and the brand recognition or the feeling that I got from the website.
And what I'll say too is that this company in particular still has great visual branding on their social media. But when you click and you read through and you're interested enough to read what the caption says, that's where it starts to be inconsistent, and you could start to lose some potential customers because of that inconsistency.
And again, it's the difference between the branding. The branding's strong. Like, the branding itself is strong. The difference between the branding and the brand voice. And that's where it just sort of fell off. And I think that's because we're still developing our brand voice in a lot of organizations. We're not there yet, but look how important it is.
Or some people have it, but it hasn't been communicated and shared with everyone. And so it's not everywhere.
And I think we'd like to sort of wrap it up with a few great examples of organizations that are nailing both the website, the social, the brand voice, the documents, and everything in one complete package that we absolutely know that they have a brand voice. And we'll just scroll through a couple of examples, and one is Mailchimp.
Mailchimp is great.
So Mailchimp, obviously, you know, a large organization, very, very popular, very forward thinking, but I don't think the size of the organization has anything to do with it. When I look at all of the brand voice, it is consistent from the first page of the website to the purchasing subscription page where you're actually reading about the actual pricing, so pricing doesn't have to be boring, right through to their Instagram, their Facebook, everything. There's a very cheeky sort of language that's written. I get the voice. I even know the mascot. I think the mascot's name was, they have it written in there somewhere. We might have to read whatever.
I don't know.
But the mascot, you know, talks and whatever. So I think that, like, scrolling through, you can really see where the copy represents the person, and you get the idea of who's behind the brand. Like, what is this person?
Yeah.
You know, they're quirky, they're funny, they're humorous, they don't take themselves too serious, but they're professional enough to produce great work, and they're colorful, and their font is fun, and they're, you know, forward thinking, and I get all that from their marketing and their branding.
You get all that, and you also get the sense you know what services they offer, you have trust in them, they're still selling a product, they're still communicating the information they need to communicate. Brand voice doesn't mean you have to just throw everything out the window and just have a coffee talk with a friend. You can still communicate really important information, but you just have to look for those moments where you can insert your personality. Maybe you have a whole sentence that's really serious because maybe you are talking about something serious, but then you add a follow-up sentence that just brings in that personality. So again, just looking for those moments. So looking for moments where you can connect with your customers online, and then looking for moments where you can insert your personality into your copy. It doesn't have to be all the time, but it needs to be consistent.
Exactly.
Another brand that I love and I think is really consistent is Wealth Simple. So let's take a look at their website really quickly. Their copy is amazing. Really short, to the point. Their whole message is wealth can be simple, easy, quick, and that's reflected in all of their sentences. Very simple, easy to read, easy to understand, really great tempo, really great adjectives, very consistent, really great, way to outline the different options. And then if you head over to their social media, it carries through. Still very quick, to the point, super simple. Again, it's an example of really great visual branding as well as really great copy branding or brand voice. And then you can even see that in TikTok. So this is a company that actually has an amazing TikTok presence, which is really important for the new generation, more and more millennials, definitely Gen Zs, and even other generations are getting on TikTok more. And they have the brand voice on TikTok too. So this is a really great example. And money can be something stressful, right? It can be stressful, it can be overwhelming, but their brand messaging, which is simple, it's easy, it's not intimidating, it comes through and it's amazing.
And I think what I love about Wealth Simple is when you look at the other financial institutions, it is so different. Their entire brand voice is completely different than than a lot of the other big financial institutions.
Yeah.
So they've really, with mostly their brand voice, I mean, again, their visuals are great, but I don't think their branding has set them apart. It's their brand voice. It's definitely their voice. It is their copy. It is the way that they communicate. That's what set them apart. And I think that's where you're going to start to see companies and organizations moving forward. Branding is always going to be important, but that next level where that voice is so strong is where you're going to set yourself apart as an organization from your competitors. If you're just keeping, your branding, which is great, but your brand voice is different here, and you're not putting some thought into that consistency and forward-thinking brand voice, I think your competitors are going to jump forward, and that's, I think, what Well Simple did. They came and they had a whole different brand voice.
Yeah, and they're personal.
Yeah,
They're
and
personal.
I can tell from their brand voice who they are.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Well, you build trust, you build that connection. They're making the most of all of their moments of connection, and then as a person who's investing your money, you're making an emotional decision at some point. Sure, you're going to look at all the stats, you're going to look at the data, you're going to look at the reviews, you're going to look at all that. But at the end of the day, if you trust the brand, you're going to make that purchase because you're building a connection. You feel connected to them, and that's what their brand voice is really helping achieve. And I think it's a great example. I just love that it all comes together. It's one of the examples that we look at sometimes for some of, as inspiration. And yeah, it's great. There are a lot of great examples.
Oh, there's so many. There's so many great examples. And like I said,
so that was a lot about brand voice. Obviously, we can talk about this for a really long time, but the most important thing that we wanted to tell everyone who's joining us today is you want to make sure that you have a brand voice, number one. You want to be consistent with it, and then you want to really use it as a way to make connections with your customers, with your potential customers, so that you get more sales, so that you get more leads at the end of the day. And to help you get started with that, we've put together a brand voice worksheet. We're sending it to everyone on the Coffee Talk email list. So again, you can go and get on that email list to make sure that you get that worksheet. And the worksheet is basically a fillable document where you can answer questions that will help you start defining your brand voice. You can even use it as a little brand voice guide while you work on creating a bigger one, but hopefully that helps you get started so that you can have a consistent brand voice that helps you get more leads and make more sales and just, have a better online presence altogether.
So thanks so much, Curniss. Thank you for, creating the brand voice, the first one that I actually ever saw, teaching me about brand voice, creating one with the team for Shout Media, and starting to really show me how important a brand voice is. And hopefully we've been able today to teach you a bit on how important it is. And again, as usual, if there's any questions or anything, we have a ton of ways for you to reach out and get a hold of us, and we'll touch base with you for sure.
I've been on my hustle every day and night. I'm flexing like a shark with an appetite. I'm making you a believer. Have some faith, I'll make you a believer.